In today's chess video, we'll be looking at two incredible chess puzzles, and I also have an interesting story to go along. So let's get straight into it. So in a school, we have the biggest chess championship going on, and this is the final game between the two best players, William and Ben. William is playing as white and Ben is playing as black. All the students are watching this intense chess game, waiting to crown their next chess champion. And we have reached this critical position where the white pawns are moving this way and the black pawns are moving down. It is white to move and both players are thinking really hard, planning for their next set of moves. Now the big question is, who is winning this? Is it white? Is it black? Or is this simply a draw? I want you guys to analyze and tell me in the comments what you think about this position. Before we begin, I would like to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Alright, let's continue with our story. Now in this position, William continues with a very natural looking move, pawn to b7. He wants to promote to a queen. So obviously Ben stops him from promoting and he plays rook to b2. And now everyone believes that black is in a very strong position. See, it looks very difficult to save this pawn. But here William comes up with an absolutely insane looking knight to b5. He's sacrificing the knight. Everyone is trying to figure out the logic behind this move because black can simply take with the rook and still there is no way to save this pawn. But hold on, white has a brilliant idea here. He can take this pawn and now the rook can't move because it is pinned. Even if he takes the rook, white simply promotes to a queen and that's completely winning for white. And here, even if he tries to remove the pin with a move like king a6, white can simply exchange the rooks and again, he gets a queen and ends up in a match-winning position. Now Ben was a strong player, so he figured out this rook d5 tactic. Therefore, in this position, he did not take the knight. Instead, he went for a completely different plan with knight to h4. He's trying to trap the king in the corner. The idea is to control this square and finish off the game with rook b1 checkmate. But William won't let this happen, so he brings back his rook and protects his king. Now Ben responds with another attacking move, knight to f3. This time the idea is to mate him via h2. William looks in trouble because the checkmate looks almost unstoppable. He keeps thinking for a while and eventually he decides to give a check because that's the only move that saves him. Now here, Ben needs to figure out where to move his king. Look, he has three options. If he takes the knight, white promotes to a queen and the rook is gone. Going back, even if the king goes to b6, again, white promotes with a check and then he can just go after the king and win the game. So basically, in this position, black is left with no option but to go to b4. Now remember, black still has this checkmate threat looming around, so white cannot promote immediately. Therefore, to save himself, William just sacrifices his rook. Now see, black cannot move away because of the pin, so he takes with a check and the white king starts to run. William is hoping to somehow escape from here and get this queen. The crowd is excited, the pressure is building. On the other side, Ben needs to do something about this pawn. He's thinking of giving another check, which means he'll have to sacrifice the knight. And then maybe he can jump in here and try to fight back from there. But he's not sure whether he should actually go for this check and give up the knight. Anyway, he was about to play rook g1, but then he realizes that he has a lot of time left on the clock, like almost 15 minutes. Whereas white on the other hand has less than a minute left. Now since Ben has a lot of time left, he gets up from his chair and goes to the washroom. The time is ticking and everyone is waiting in anticipation. It turns out that Ben had actually hidden his smartphone in the washroom. So he gets in, locks the door and he quickly loads up his position on the chess engine. To his surprise, he finds out that rook g1 won't work, especially if white plays this perfectly. In fact, the engine recommends him to play knight d4 and actually allow white to promote to a queen. And as per the engine, this is a drawish endgame and that's the best black can do from here. So after looking at all this, Ben quickly runs back to the playing hall. He abandons the rook g1 idea and ultimately he decides to follow the engine. So he plays knight to d4. Now look, white can't take because then black can simply get out of the way and capture this pawn. Therefore, in this position, white simply promotes to a queen. Ben picks up the knight. And now if you look at the points by material, white has 9 plus 2, 11 points. And black also has 5 plus 3 plus 3, 11 points. So the engine considers this as a drawish endgame, but still I feel white is slightly better. So going by the engine, Ben feels that getting a draw from this position would be actually great for him. So he tries his luck and offers a draw to William. And surprisingly, William accepted it immediately. Soon they both started discussing about the game, and Ben felt that William could have played on since he had the queen. But William was like, I was under serious time pressure, and at one point I thought I was losing, so draw is a great result for me. He in fact asked Ben that in this position, why didn't you play rook to g1? Because after king takes, rook g8, you take control of the 8th rank, and I thought you were winning. Now Ben had obviously used unfair means and he had checked out the engine, so he told him that after rook g8, you could have played knight a7. But then what about rook b8? Well, then you could fork the king and the rook, and that's just game over. Oh, and what if you move the king? Well, then you have knight c8, and I can't stop you from getting a queen, so that's the main problem. Looking at all these variations, William was quite surprised because he did not even think of this. He openly admitted that he would have never found such brilliant moves, especially under this tremendous time pressure. In fact, he told Ben that he was planning to resign after this rook g1 itself. After knowing this, Ben was very disappointed because he felt that had he not used the engine and gone by his instinct, he would have probably won the championship. Anyway, since this was a final and the classical game ended in a draw, we now move on to a tiebreaker, which is going to be a blitz game between William and Ben. Now this next game also reached a very interesting position. But before I show it to you and continue with the story, I would like to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Guys, just like an intense chess game, life can also be very stressful. Whenever I am in a stressful or anxious situation, I try to distract myself. But most of the times your thoughts are not in your control. That's when you need the help of a professional therapist who can take care of your mental health. Finding the right therapist can be a daunting experience, but BetterHelp makes it very easy for you. Well, BetterHelp is an amazing online platform where you can seek therapy at your own convenience. It's online, it's remote, and just by answering a few questions, you get matched to a suitable professional therapist. The best part is that if you don't really get along with that therapist, you can even switch to a new one at no additional cost. So basically, BetterHelp wants to make therapy more affordable and more accessible so that you can start living a happy and healthy life. It's really easy to sign up. All you need to do is go to this link, betterhelp.com/chesstalk. That's better, HELP, and using this link, you'll get 10% off on your first month. Link is in the description box below, so do check it out. So coming back to our story, this is the grand finale, the tiebreaker. It is William versus Ben. Again, William is playing as white and Ben is black. We've reached this critical position where William has this knight, bishop and a pawn, whereas Ben is left with only a rook. Seems like white has the advantage, but it's difficult to promote this pawn. Can you find the winning plan for white? Well, this rook is threatening to take the knight, and if the knight moves, black can simply capture the pawn. So to defend the pawn, white needs to keep the knight here. William picks up the bishop, brings it to f4, he defends the knight and also threatens a discovered attack on the king. Remember, this black king can't move, so any more checks from the knight or the bishop and it's just game over. Therefore, Ben tries a very cunning move, rook to c7. Look, now if he moves the knight, then that's a stalemate since both the rook and the king can't move. Therefore, in this position, William does not move the knight. Instead, he just keeps it on this diagonal and plays a waiting move with his bishop, so that after the rook moves away, he can execute this checkmate. Now look, black has to move the rook, but he smartly brings it to this e7 square so that after the discovered check, he can capture the bishop. William realizes that giving up the bishop is the only way forward, so we have a discovered check. Ben takes it, but now William needs to be careful because if he captures the rook, then it's a draw by stalemate since the king is left with no legal moves. Therefore, he reveals his idea of moving his knight to this particular square because he does not take the rook. Instead, he's setting up a mating net on the king. Black is in a desperate situation, so he goes for a check. Remember, he can't take the rook because that's again a stalemate. So he blocks with the knight, which by the way results in a check. Ben has no option but to go for an exchange sacrifice. Rook takes, king takes, and black is forced to move the king away. William moves his king forward, taking control of this important square. And after the king moves down, white promotes to a queen, and that's when Ben offers his resignation. William is crowned the chess champion of the school, and he is really thrilled celebrating his victory. On the other hand, Ben is frustrated because he knows he could have won the championship had he believed in himself and not cheated in the previous game. And friends, that's why you should always play fair. Alright, so it's puzzle time. Here's another interesting position. It is white's turn and you need to find the best move for white. Share your answers in the comments. Let's see how many of you get this right. And I hope you won't use any engines for this. Anyway guys, Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one.